First of all, welcome to all the participants, attendees to this event today. As Yolanda just mentioned, the room is filling up, so I'm going to buy some time because we still have colleagues signing up. Today's event, welcome to this event, we'll discuss the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA. We thought it would be a great opportunity to discuss the AfCFTA as we're almost 6 months into that free trade area being fully, how do I say it, launched. Beginning of this year was the official launch of AfCFTA. So 6 months down the line is a good moment to take stock of where we are, what we have achieved, what opportunities we see, what challenges we are aware of, because I think we can all agree that there's still a lot of work to be done, but that is not surprising given the magnitude of the AfCFTA and its objectives. For those who don't know us, so first, my name is Kat, short for Katharina Felgenhauer. I am the delegate of German Industry and Commerce here in Nigeria. My colleague Yolanda Ohuma, who just spoke and who was in touch with most of you, is in charge of events and marketing, and she's the brain behind this event. The Delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria works to support German companies who are interested in Nigeria or already working here. And we also work very closely with Nigerian companies who are interested in the German market or in German products or German business partners. And it is in this context that we're very happy to be working together with the German desk. The German desk is a joint initiative by the Delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria, together with Access Bank. I'll say a few more words in a minute, and the DEG. And the German desk is headed by Sebastian Barroso, who's also here in the call today with us and who will speak later. This event today would not be possible without the support of the German desk. So we really appreciate that cooperation. And I think everybody who has joined this event can join me in that appreciation that helps us have discussions like today that are very pertinent to our business reality. We have a quick look at our room. We still have more and more people sign up. I wish to acknowledge the presence of the German Consul General, Dr. Stefan Traumann, who is in the audience today. And we'll also invite him as well as all the other participants to join the conversation later during our Q&A sessions. We have a chat function as well, or Q&A function rather, embedded in Zoom that you can use also throughout the program so that we can screen your questions, your comments already, and pull them in as we move through the program. I also see we have a guest from the German Ministry for Economic Affairs, Valerie Pach, welcome. And also welcome to all the other experts and colleagues. I see it's quite a number, I can't even go through all of them, so please accept protocol observed, as we like to say. So if I'm not mentioning you specifically, that doesn't mean that you're not fully welcome. It just means that I didn't see you. So we're quite excited about today's program. Let me talk briefly about today's program. Again, AfCFTA, a topic that is very relevant to our business discussions, but one that we have found the right experts to discuss with you today. So I will not dive into the content. I'll leave that to the experts that will be speaking. And right when I'm done, we will start, and we're very honored to have the speaker with us, with the Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget of Lagos State, Honorable Sam Egube. He will give the keynote address. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining today. And this will be followed by a very interesting panel discussion moderated by Victoria Uvadoka, who's the Corporate Communications and Public Affairs Manager at Nestle. Thank you very much, Victoria, for joining us. And she will moderate a panel with the following colleagues. We have, first of all, from the AfCFTA Secretariat in Accra, Dimitar Gian, who's the Senior Advisor of Systems. Again, very honored to have her with us. I think she will join us shortly. She will be here in time to join the panel discussion. Then we have Olamide Tinoye, the area sales manager for DHL International, who can tell us a bit from the practical experience of certainly logistics in the region and the continent. Then, of course, again, I pointed out the support that we're getting from Access Bank through the German desk. Shei Kumapai, who's the Chief Financial Officer. Thank you very much for joining us today. Really looking forward to your input. And who just joined us, Bismarck Rewane. Welcome, welcome, Director and CEO of the Financial Derivatives Company Limited. So I think a very interesting panel. This will be a lively discussion. And again, to the participants in the audience, use the Q&A function in Zoom to raise your questions, even as the presentations and discussions are going on. We will then pull those questions in as we move along after the keynote address and then certainly after the panel discussion. So I think without much further ado, let's dive into the topic. Let's see what the perspective of the practitioners are that we have invited to today's sessions. Thanks again for joining us, and I am really, really pleased and honored to hand over to Honorable Sam Igube, Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget of Lagos State. Over to you, Honorable.
Thank you very much, Katrina, and I'd like to thank the entire parties from the delegation of the German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria, AHK Nigeria, for having me come give this keynote address. Like to also acknowledge the panelists who are here present. And I expect that we should have a very robust conversation around the African Free Trade Agreement, Continental Free Trade Agreement, and how we are organized to take it on. I believe that this is very important, given the time where we are and the nature of the play that we should see as it develops. And therefore, I like the idea and must congratulate everyone that will participate in this as we begin to shape the future of how Nigeria and in that light, Lagos should be responding. It's always my view that even though it's a continent of countries, that at the heart of things, you will see cities compete. So it will be Lagos, it will be Johannesburg, it will be Cairo, and other cities moving around each other to just try and create value overall for the continent. 2021 kicked off with the COVID-19 pandemic upmost in our minds and around the world. And the entire pandemic tends to constrain the way we think and the way how aggressive we are in our actions. But thankfully, I think our minds and global perception of it is opening up to accommodate business some more. This idea and this constraint is not surprising considering the extent of disruption that wreaked on the world in the last 12 months. The pandemic has naturally overshadowed many important events around the world. It's hard to focus on much else at a time when life, as we know it, has changed quite dramatically. One of the landmark happenings that COVID somehow robbed of its significance at the beginning of this year was the official implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, the world's largest trading bloc by landmass and by number of participating countries. Indeed, it was meant to kick off on the 1st of July, 2020, but of course, COVID gave us a handshake and it was pushed backwards by 6 months. We now are 6 months into its implementation, and it is a good time to begin to look back because in my view, the way we implement on this will require very frequent reviews and very active participation. The delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria, AHK Nigeria, has done a fantastic job in bringing together high-level business executives from various sectors of the economy in addition to senior government officials, to engage on a most important issue relating to the continental trade and commercial integration. I commend the delegation for taking this initiative to convene this dialogue. And I thank all those present on these webinars for taking time out to participate with us. You cannot speak of an African trade area without reserving a place of prominence for Lagos. As the largest subnational economy on the continent, on a ranking of African national economies, if Lagos was a country, it probably will rank about 5th. And depending on what the exchange rate is, could move from 5th to 7th. Nevertheless, I mean, it exceeds 90% in size of all countries on the continent. In recent years, Nigerian companies have ventured beyond our national borders, and Lagos remains what we call a gateway of Nigeria to the rest of the world, and we see it also as a gateway of the rest of the world to Nigeria, just to show and underscore its significance. Our banks have all moved, a lot of them have moved into continental plays, right? And leading conglomerates like Dangote, that has its roots from Lagos, has also driven its footprints across the African continent. South African brands and have also been well represented in Nigeria, and you can see that everyone seems eager to begin to trade and to operate these agreements. The goal is to create a single African market for goods and services and a single unified entity for the free movement of persons within the continent. Such an ambitious endeavor will not happen overnight or without action. So patience and deep understanding are going to be key in developing what started as an idea over several years and is now in the form of an agreement. There are opportunities for everyone. Nigerian companies can tap new markets around the continent, and companies outside Nigeria can also explore Africa's biggest market, which is, in my view, Nigeria, and specifically Lagos, which holds countless opportunities. Let me point out that Nigeria is a big player in the financial institutions that are powering the AfCFTA, like the African Development Bank and Afro-Exim Bank, like other countries also in the continent. Between them, these institutions have committed and are committing huge resources towards ensuring the success of the agreement and the trade area. On our part in Lagos, we see ourselves also as pioneers for pushing on various ease of doing business reforms. When this administration did come into power, we said we were going to drive what we call the themes agenda. And that agenda basically is centered around traffic management and transportation, where we wanted to establish an intermodal transport system. The second pillar is health and environment. And for us, it was to improve the quality of preventive and curative health management systems across the state. And then education and technology basically was to improve access and the quality of education, leveraging technology, not just as an enabler, but also as a business. Then we said we needed to drive our readiness and our openness for business in making Lagos a 21st century economy. But Lagos has become the heart of entertainment for Africa. And we felt that given its capacity also to employ and to provide employment, we wanted to continue to put Lagos ahead as Africa's foremost entertainment and tourism destination. But like we believe, all of this can drop as a pack of cards if you have very weak security and governance systems. And so the last pillar really is centered around security and our governance system as a whole. And therefore, in that light, one of the things we've tried to do is to have general legal and judicial reforms, ranging from the establishment of a multi-door house courthouse mechanism for the resolution of business disputes to a very small claims court, digitization of our land administration process, and so on. All of this is basically to ensure that those companies who operate out of Lagos gain some efficiencies and gain some advantage in engaging the African market. According to the Global Startup Ecosystems Report of 2021, which basically ranked 1,000 cities across 100 countries, which was published this month, Lagos has now overtaken Nairobi to become Africa's leading startup ecosystem. This is not a surprise to us. You know, when this administration flagged off, we did launch the Lagos State Science Research and Innovation Council, which was driven by business owners and the academia, basically to invest in new startups and in new ideas and in the research into that. I'm happy to inform us that a lot of the products that have come out of there, several of them are in the patent stage. And we see a lot of promise in driving that. And the same way, we will see a lot happening in the transportation sector, in the health sector, in what we are doing around technology, what we are doing in the reforms in agriculture, and what we are about to do in terms of the policies we are trying to drive in energy, to see the possibility of unlocking that sector for Lagos, right? There's still a lot of work to be done. I mean, being ahead of Nairobi and the top place in Africa is not enough. We are still 122, second position globally. So there's still a lot of hurdles to cross in staying at the cutting edge, not only the things that come out of our startup ecospace or our technology ecospace, but also in the way we are able to compete for talent around the world. This means that there's a lot of room for improvement, and we must welcome this challenge as a government that wants to transform Lagos into a 21st century megacity. We must continue to push the envelope forward till we see the clear difference and the mileage which our various programs can achieve in terms of positioning enterprises in Lagos for success in the African continent. The Lekki Free Trade Zone in Lagos is a testament to the power and possibilities of an enabling business environment and what the people can do when they choose to invest in a place. Lagos State is taking advantage of these opportunities made possible by the federal government to develop one-of-a-kind investment zone that is currently attracting hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate, light manufacturing, food processing, and many more. Once this port is complete, right, it's likely, I mean, in the first phase and second phase, it's our expectation that it would take the Apapa and Tinkan, the existing Lagos ports, by capacity. It will be 4 times what the existing Lagos ports are doing. And it will be the first deep sea port in the country, the first deep sea port of that magnitude in West Africa. And I believe that it will position this place as a significant hub for trans-African trade. In the area of security, which we believe, like I said, if security and governance is failing, then every other thoughts that or ideas you have will fail. We have started, first of all, by trying to leverage technology. And we have commissioned under a PPP transaction, the Lagos Metropolitan Broadband Fiber Duct Infrastructure. What that does is that it will bring a lot of our capacity, all our underwater cables, into Lagos and into homes and institutions with high-speed capability of internet. In Nigeria for Nigerian entities and work in Nigeria for international entities across the world. On top of this, we are going to then line up our various solutions around e-health systems, using technology in our health systems, using technology in our education systems to be able to ramp up our training systems in the state And then we're also driving other smart city initiatives by putting significant amount of CCTV capacity, intelligent cameras across the state that will help with a lot of traffic management and a lot also with our intelligence framework and security. As you all know, Lagos is a leading port city in Africa with a brand new deep sea port under construction, which when completed in the next 2 years, within this administration will be Nigeria's first truly deep sea port and one of the largest in Africa. Those in the business of international shipping and logistics will be aware of the insecurity challenges in the Gulf of Guinea over the years and the attendant impact on trade. But this negative picture is now set to change with the comprehensive security coverage offered by the Deep Blue project based here in Lagos and launched by Mr. President. Basically to protect and secure Nigeria's waterways up to the Gulf of Guinea. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the African Continental Free Agreement will not succeed automatically or by itself. It must be made to work in a deliberate and painstaking fashion. Like I usually would say, anything, if you do not cultivate anything, it will yield an undesirable outcome. So if you want a desirable outcome out of this trade agreement, then we must deliberately cultivate for those outcomes. We have to make it work. I have emphasized the fact that the government have a very big role to play in this regard, and will now go on to stress that the private sector is just as important, right? I always tell people that the private sector must at all times be respected because it's always richer than the government. All the government gets is a percentage of their income. So the capacity to really invest, right, and to drive things lies a lot with the private sector. As business and commercial players in Africa's largest economy, you have a duty to understand the agreement in depth so that you can be best positioned working together with the government to make adjustments, regulatory adjustment to identify and harness the opportunities arising from it. Fundamentally, the African Continental Free Trade Area should work for you. You must be strong believers in the limitless potential of Africa. I believe that you all are, which is why you are already doing business here, and which is why you are actually having webinars like this to further improve our insights and our responsibility to the changes that are coming on us all. Let's resist the temptation to impose a one-size-fits-all solutions for everywhere we are. The countries within the continent have very many things in common, but there are few things that they do not have in common, which matter when trade comes into play. And therefore, we must position ourselves with that understanding to be able to survive and thrive as part of this entire ecosystem. Nigeria has a National Action Committee on the implementation of the AfCFTA established by Mr. President. This committee is led by the Honorable Minister for Trade and Investment, and I think we should continue to engage that committee as we move on. Instead of seeing the glass as half empty, I think it's important to begin to see the glass as half full. Indeed, we have many challenges, but except we focus on expanding what is good around Africa, we will not be able to overcome our sight and embrace of the challenges that we face. So opportunities are bound for transformation and rewarding investments in infrastructure, agriculture, ICT, financial services, health, education, and so on. Take the example of transport connections across West Africa, the Enugu-Bemenda Highway, the Lagos-Badagry Expressway, the Kanu-Maradi Rail, are some examples of things that are possible. And many more will throw out as you impress the demand of your businesses upon a country that is willing to adapt, to change, and yes, it must, right, to thrive and survive in line with our vision. There's still a lot of fine-tuning and calibration ahead that needs to be done, systems that needs to be updated, negotiations are continuing on various protocols of agreements, but we must not allow the work in progress to get in the way of what needs to be done and what has already been achieved. Following my remarks, there will be a panel discussion featuring sector players, practitioners, subject matter experts, right, on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, and basically to highlight the opportunities and make suggestions on how we should position as a country, as a state, as a people, to take on the African market. Thankfully, we as Nigerians are already very audacious. We're already very adventurous. We're already all over Africa. And I think that spirit is part of what we contribute to how we make a success around Africa. The AfCFTA is one of the most important positive things that has ever happened to the African continent. And I would like to boldly proclaim that it is here to stay and to benefit all African countries and the people. I'd like to thank all of you for gathering. I'd like to specifically acknowledge the Consul General of Germany, who is also present with us. And I look forward to the panel discussions. I thank you for listening.
Thank you so very much, Honorable Sam Egube, the Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget of Lagos State. Thank you for highlighting how Lagos is getting ready or has always been ready for AfCFTA and to provide opportunities for business, creative sector and other stakeholders. Thank you very much for that input. I want to quickly check. We have a question, I'm not sure. Maybe I can raise this question now, Honorable, if you still have a minute. There's one question from the audience. What are the specific roles of the National Action Committee for the AfCFTA? From your perspective from Lagos, is there anything you can comment here? National Action Committee for AfCFTA.
Okay, so basically, the committee has been moving around and talking with all of us, especially Lagos. I think the idea is to try and identify where we have very strong advantages, because the idea of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is really to enable Africa, right? And therefore, it is to call for actions in a manner that will cause Africa as a bloc to become more significant as a trade partner, not just in the physical size of the continent, but in the trade volumes with the rest of the world. And therefore, various states need to begin to prepare based on their relative strengths in several areas. Lagos is one big market, and is the home for the financial services industry. It's also one of the leading lights in Africa as a hub for technology. Our land size is small, so we are not a huge production center for agriculture, but we can shape the way agriculture moves, being a very huge market. We note that countries like Holland, the Netherlands, are probably just as small as Lagos, and they are one of the top 5 exporters of food, right, to the world. And therefore, we do not disqualify ourselves from that capability, even though it's not our point. I think in working with the committee is basically to identify areas of strengths, areas of comparative advantage to push us forward. Lagos today, we have flagged off our 30-year development plan, where we are just focusing on creating high-value jobs, right? And to do that, we need to wake up several sectors that have the right to win by reason of their nearness as a leader in those sectors, and also sectors that have high impact as it has to do with creating jobs. At the end of the day, development is about household income. It's about household well-being, you know, and that is what eventually we should see if the African Trade Agreement is working well. And I think that's what the committee working with different states is trying to achieve.
Thank you very much again for this input, Honorable. For those who are listening in, I just want to give a quick update. We have over 100 participants in today's session. I think that is reflective of the importance of the topic, but probably also of the breadth of discussions and ideas and perceptions of the AfCFTA. So I think it's time also, with a view of time, to move to discussions, to panel discussions. Discussion. Before I do that, I want to quickly mention that we also had the Consul General of Switzerland listen in for a moment, though he seems to have dropped out for the time being. Maybe he can join us again later. And I also want to repeat for those who joined late that today's session, organized by the Delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria, would not be possible without the support by the German desk, the cooperation of Axis Bank, the DEG, and the Delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria. And we will hear from the head of the German desk, Sebastian Barroso, after the panel discussion. So stay tuned for that. With this, I would hand over to Victoria Uwadoka, Corporate Communications and Public Affairs Manager at Nestlé, who will moderate and guide the panel discussion. And again, reminder to all the participants, please use the Q&A function in Zoom where you can put your questions. We will be monitoring the questions and pull them into discussion as they fit. Over to you, Victoria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kat, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the session today. And without much ado, the Honorable Sam Egube has actually given us a lot of background that we're going to deliberate on today. And we'd like to kick it off, but would like to ask all the panelists to please introduce themselves. I'll start again. My name is Victoria Uwadoka, Corporate Communications and Public Affairs Manager for Nestlé in Nigeria. And can I ask Mrs. Demita again to introduce herself?
Thank you very much, Victoria. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, yeah. There might be some feedback from my background because I'm actually transiting.
Okay.
But yeah. So my name is Demita Gyang. I am the senior advisor to the Secretary General of the AfCFTA, His Excellency Wamkele Mene, on customs, trade facilitation, and transit issues. Before that, I was the alternate chief trade negotiator for Nigeria for the AfCFTA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to ask Mr. Olumide Tinoye to take the floor now.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be here. My name is Olamide Tinoye, Area Sales Manager for DHL International. It's a wonderful day, and we hope to have a good time with everyone and attendance. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Sheikh Kumapai, please.
Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Victoria. My name is Sheikh Kumapai. I'm the Executive Director responsible for African business. I'm also the Group CFO of Access Bank. Thank you for the privilege to speak at this seminar, and I hope that you would enjoy yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Bismarck Rwani.
My name is Bismarck Rwani. I'm an economist, and I'm the Chief Executive of Financial Derivatives Company in Lagos, Nigeria. I hope to have plenty of fun today while we discuss the issues of the wider and bigger African market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, and then talking about fun, it's important to have fun even when we're discussing such a serious subject. So there's been a lot of discussions in the news and all of that. It's 6 months after the AfCFTA took off, and what have we done so far? But, I also know that, in my course of working with different people, even within my organization, I have questions about what is this AfCFTA about? How am I going to benefit from it? What is it about? What are the structures that we have in place? And I'm so happy that we have Mrs. Demita Gyang here. And I'll ask you to please just give us a view. What is this AfCFTA about? What are the benefits, and what are the structures that we have in place already to make this work?
Thank you very much. Like you said, the AfCFTA has become a buzzword, and it is the trending thing. But it's beyond the trending thing. It is the dream of the founding fathers to put Africa on the map, to industrialize Africa. It is a flagship project, Agenda 2063 of the African Union towards the Africa that we all want. It it is, let me put it in short, it is a way that we can make Africa and buy Africa, so that through trade, we can grow our economies. The intra-Africa trade is just 16%. So Africa is one of the regions that trade the least with itself. Other regions, the Asian region, the American region, they trade, the European Union, they trade at higher percentages. Their trade is first regional before it is continental or across continents. But for Africa, we trade more with the rest of the world than we trade amongst ourselves. It might be, it's been said that it's a colonial legacy, because those who designed our economies designed it that way. Designed it that we ship our raw materials from here, direct to them to produce things and send back to us. And so the African Continental Free Trade Area is an attempt to solve that problem. If we trade more, if we increase trade among ourselves, the benefits of trade will go down. Of course, it will grow our economies, it will grow jobs. It will, let me use the buzzword, it will lead to wealth creation, you know, those things that we love to see. So the African Continental Free Trade Area was flagged off by the African Union heads of government in 2012 at a meeting in Addis. They launched, they agreed to create the African Continental Free Trade Area. Then in 2015, they met in Johannesburg and launched the negotiations. Now, the first phase of the negotiations was concluded and signed and adopted by 44 signatories. That is in March 2018. And then eventually the agreement entered into force in May 2019, May 30th. Based on the provisions of the agreement that says once 22 countries have ratified, the agreement enters into force. So by May 30th, 22 countries had ratified, so the agreement entered into force 1 month after the ratification of 22 countries. Now that's a bit of the history. It was operationalized. The operational phase was launched in July of that same year. And then eventually by January 2020, January 2021, the start of trading was launched. Now, what does this mean? Phase 1 negotiations covered 3 areas. It covered trading services, it covered trading goods, and then it covers the rules and procedure for settlement of disputes. So what was signed in March 21st in Kigali and adopted was actually the agreement itself establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area, and then the protocol on trading goods, the protocol on trading services, and then the protocol on rules and procedures for the settlement of disputes. It is structured to take place in 3 phases. So phase 2 is about to commence. Exploratory meetings have been held about phase 2. Phase 2 actually covers intellectual property, competition policy, and investment. So you can see that the AfCFTA is not a traditional free trade area. It is a package. And then the heads of state and government also added 2 additional areas to the phase 2, which is women and youth, and then digital trade. So you can see it is a beyond the traditional free trade agreement. Now, what has happened since then? I heard what you said. That's what we get asked everywhere we go now. 6 months after, what has happened? Now, let me start by saying that the AfCFTA will be fully implemented in 2033. So Africans will need to have patience. Why would it be fully implemented in 2033? Because that's what the modalities say. So the modalities say that for trading goods, we will liberalize 90% of our tariff lines in the first 5 years. Okay, so it is not in year 0. It is in the first 5 years. There's a transition period so that we won't have a restless approach, so that we would tackle the shocks that come from revenue loss. So it is an equal implementation, a linear implementation for the first 5 years. So even the 90% part of the goods, it won't be fully implemented until 5 years from now. And then we also have a 7% of the products that have been kept aside as sensitive products. Their implementation will take 13 years. So it will take till 2033 before the African Continental Free Trade Area is fully implemented. Now, let me go to the annexes that of protocol on trading goods. So it is beyond removing tariffs. It is about making sure that we eliminate non-tariff barriers. And if you go through studies, you will realize that when you eliminate non-tariff barriers, you would actually increase intra-Africa trade by almost 52%. That's a study by UNECA. So non-tariff barriers actually achieve more in terms of increasing trade. So we have an annex that deals with how we can deal with non-tariff barriers, okay? And then we have an annex on standards. You have to meet the standards to be able to trade. And so that also has to be implemented. And then we have an annex on transit procedures, which we need to implement, on customs cooperation, on mutual administrative assistance, on trade facilitation. So it is beyond the 90% tariffs that we hope to remove by 5 years' time. It is about implementing these annexes. So for the African Continental Free Trade Area, implementation is actually within three domains. It is at the continental level. It is at the national government level. It is at the private sector level. I loved what the commissioner said. It is about the private sector knowing their rights and obligations within the agreement. It is about the private sector knowing what the agreement says. It is about them knowing the rules of origin with which they can conduct their trade, to know whether what they are manufacturing will qualify for the preference area. It is about them knowing their rights of transit. It is about them knowing their rights when it comes to customs cooperation, knowing their rights when it comes to trade facilitation, knowing that there is a trade remedies that you can take to if these things don't go right, if there is abuse of the privileges that are granted under the preference. Now, at national government level, what national government needs to do is indeed do what the agreement says, remove tariffs on 90% of the goods, because that's what has been agreed. Remove tariffs in 13 years on 97%, because by the time you add 7%, it now becomes 97% of the goods. Make sure they eliminate non-tariff barriers. Make sure that when the producers meet the standards, that they allow their goods free movement. Implement the annexes on transit procedures, making sure that goods that are transiting within your territory are granted that free access. Implementing the annex on customs cooperation. Now, this is a process. National governments would have to factor it into their national laws. So for instance, the customs infrastructure need to be ready. The customs infrastructure, of course, it's under national government. So all the customs infrastructure need to be ready. The agreed 90% that is going to zero need to be gazetted by national governments for it to be something that they can implement. The customs administration need to have a new set of tariff book, because now you have a new set of tariffs for a preference area that will apply for to the 54 member states that signed, or the ones that have eventually become state parties, and as more and more become state parties. So they need a new set of, they need a manual on rules of origin with which they can interpret rules of origin. It needs to be published, it needs to be made available. The rules of origin they need to ensure that goods that have rules will be traded under the preference area. So which means you can only for now trade what is in the 86% tariff lines that have rules. The rest that don't have rules will still be traded at the multilateral, at the MFN, what we call the MFN rate. So in a nutshell, this is the African Continental Free Trade Area. What will it do for you? The numbers are swaying. By 2035, when we would have implemented, the World Bank study says that at least 100 million Africans would have been lifted out of poverty. And you know what that means. For a continent with a youth population, for a continent where jobs are scarce, you would have lifted about 100 million out of poverty. It would have closed the gender parity gap a little, you know, because you have more women, because women trade in small scale across the borders a lot. Most businesses that move across the borders in small scale are actually owned by women. So it would have closed the gender parity gap. it would, of course, increase the GDP. The numbers are mind-boggling. It would right now it's a combined GDP of about 3 million, but by then it would be a combined GDP of about 8 trillion. So from the 3 trillion to you know what that means. So the numbers are good on what it stands to do. But to break it down to our everyday language, if I have a market access of up to 1.2 billion people, let me use Nigeria as an example. Before now, you would have been selling to maybe 200 million people. Let's say you have a reach to the entire Nigeria. But now you have a market of 1.2 billion people. So it goes without saying, with more markets, you will produce more. And as you produce more, you will employ more, right? And those who you employ will now alleviate poverty, create wealth. And all in all, it will integrate us. It will make us a one continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very compelling, very striking numbers, very striking potential. And at least we know that, it's by 2033, 2035, it will be fully operational. Very good information. And I'd like to ask participants, please, you have any question, kindly use the Q&A box, and I will take your questions as we go along. And very, very important discussions. You've talked to us about the different annexes that need to be implemented. The more important ones, I think right now are standards, and then the transit procedures and all of that. And we talked about the non-tariff barriers that need to be lifted. And like, we mentioned already, sometimes it's the lack of information. So those in the private sector need to know their rights and their obligations and what it takes to really take advantage of this. And that brings me to the next part of our discussion today. Okay, so with all of this, with the framework that has been outlined by Mrs. Temitope, where are we? Where are we in Africa? Where are we in Nigeria? Where are we in the sub-region? Are we ready? Do we have the infrastructure ready? You've talked about the different levels at the AfCFTA level, the Africa level, the regional level, but at national levels, are we ready? And with that, I'd like to ask, you as well, where with the structural implementation, how ready are we? We've talked about the things that need to be done. Where are we with that? Are we ready? And how ready are we to even work together as a sub-region in West and Central Africa to start from? And I'm going to ask other panelists to tell us how ready we are in Nigeria, because most of us are based in Nigeria. Access Bank is everywhere. I mean, so DHL is everywhere as well. So yes, we see the structural framework that needs to be put in place. Where are we? Are we ready now?
If that is to me, I would say that in terms of the customs administrations that would implement this, 6 countries have indicated their readiness. Like I say, and you don't blame the customs administrations of other countries, because these things need adjustment time. What I outlined, creating a new tariff book, gazetting. So when it comes to these things, it depends on the national processes. And each member state has a different national process. But at least 6 countries have notified the secretariat their customs infrastructure is in place. They can continue trading. So that's one. And so the other thing is that's what we have received so far in terms of customs infrastructure. Yes, from implementing the annexes from the Secretariat's viewpoint, I am actually there to see to the implementation of the annex on transit, the annex on trade facilitation, and the annex on customs cooperation. And one thing we have received from national administrations is that they would require us to break it down for them, right? So, so the first thing we are going to roll off in towards implementing this is a massive capacity building for the field operators, those who will be at the field implementing. The customs man out there needs to know there is an AfCFTA, there is a preference area, there are new tariffs to be charged, and then these goods must be facilitated, their movement, right? So they have asked for that. They have said they need to know what is in the agreement. They need to know what their obligations will be after now. And then we are rolling that out. The other thing we are rolling out, because we recognize that investment in infrastructure is key. Actually, it is not just because our tariffs were high in Africa that we were not trading. We were also not trading because logistics is poor. The logistics infrastructure is poor. So it takes you longer to move goods from one African state to another African state than it will take you to take it to London, to take it to the US, for instance, to take it to China even. So we need investment in infrastructure. That's what this will take to accompany the agreements that have been rolled out so that the goods can actually move. I mean, it doesn't do my goods any good that it's going to receive zero tariff when it gets to where it's going if there is no pathway for it to move. Yeah, so that is key. So we are also, as a secretariat, going on that drive. We are out on a drive to attract the needed investment along trade corridors that we have identified. Because if things are made seamless along these trade corridors, of course, national governments will see the advantage that the African Continental Free Trade Area has brought. For instance, within the ECOWAS sub-region, we have identified the Abidjan-Lagos trade corridor. If we can facilitate trade, if we can put infrastructure on that particular route, that route serves has about 35 million inhabitants and moves about 130 billion worth of goods within a period. So it is a very attractive corridor. There are other corridors, and we are eventually going to attend to the other corridors, but we are using our place as the secretariat to reach out to corporations, to reach out to, and we want to make it all Africa, right? So we are reaching out to corporate financiers in Africa to undertake these projects, because we recognize and we realize that it is until this is accompanied, the agreement is accompanied by this investment in infrastructure, then we will see the benefit. So that's where we are. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So from what I hear, we see all the potential, we know what we need to do, but we're at a point where we just need to start to get ready. You know, we're looking at the Abidjan-Lagos trade corridor, we're looking at Enugu to Bamenda, we're looking at all of that. We're looking at infrastructure, transit, and all of that. Only 6 countries indicating customs readiness. There's a lot of work to do. And so that brings me to the next part of the conversation. I'd like to ask, start from Mr. Bismarck Rewane. Yes, we know that this AfCFTA is going to have impacts in different areas, but what is the potential impact on our economy as Nigeria, for instance, and on the sub-region? What do you see from your perspective?
Okay, thank you very much once again for the opportunity to speak at this event. First and foremost, let's start from where Africa is today. In the last 2 years, Africa had a negative growth of about 3.8% and is expected to grow by 2.3% this year. That's the region as a whole, compared to the global competitors. And next year, 2022, we expect to grow by 3.5%. The GDP of the whole of Africa is about 2.5 trillion, of which Nigeria is the 0.5. Basically, Nigeria is 500 billion, the largest economy. It's about 21% of the total economy. Average inflation across Africa is 8%. In Nigeria, the inflation is about 18%. So Nigeria is 10% above the average. The trade balance of the whole of Africa is about minus $20 billion. Nigeria has minus $2 billion. So Nigeria is outperforming the rest of Africa. Total external debt of the whole of Africa is $753 billion, almost $250 million short of $1 trillion. Africa has a GDP per head of $2,100 per head. Nigeria has a GDP per capita of almost the same level. Nigeria's external debt is only about $37 or $38 billion compared to the $753 billion. So generally speaking, the Nigerian economy is probably much better and stronger than the rest of Africa, although the African economies are doing much better directionally than Nigeria right now. But Nigeria's economy is challenged. Now, what do we expect? Nigeria expects and Africa expects to benefit from the economies of scale, which means that the larger your activity, the lower your average cost and the more your profitability and activity. The rules of origin, which means that if things are produced in Africa, you will have a lower tariff. And Temita talked about elimination of non-tariff barriers, which allow facilitation of trade, because regional trade is a major ingredient. Don't forget, 120 years ago, 1884 in particular, in Berlin, we had a conference where Africa was shared amongst the superpowers. And now, 100 years later, we are now talking about integrating and putting it back together. So what are the economic imperatives here? You have the rules of comparative advantage, which allows you to focus on the things that you produce better rather than producing everything. It means that intra-regional trade, like Demeter said, is only 20% as against Asia, where it's 60% and Europe, where it's 70%. So what do we need to do? There are certain reforms that are imperative for you to take advantage. This is status now, but in 5 to 10 years from now, it's going to be a different ballgame. So, and some countries are going to leapfrog, while some countries are going to wallow and just atrophy, as we say. So we need reforms in certain areas. The payment system, you cannot have trade without a payment system and currency reform. So you will have the Naira, the CD, the CFA, and all of that. What we are going to have in 2027 is the ECO, a currency. But for you to have a common currency, there has to be certain criteria in terms of trade deficit, in terms of interest rate structure, and all of that for those countries to have unison, just like the European Union. Infrastructure spend on pipelines, rails, roads, seaports, that has to be invested quite aggressively with private-public partnership and all sorts of concessioning. Financial market reforms. You cannot have financial market reform without actually dealing with the currency reform. So all of those are integrated. So we have the single African air market, what they call SANTE or whatever it is, which allows for flights between countries. 10 years ago, if you wanted to go to Togo or go to Accra, you probably had to go to Europe first. But now we have more flights across Africa than past. So having said that, the future looks very good. And what do I see? I see the Dangotes, the Access Banks, the ETIs, the UBAs and others dominating the African scene. I see us exporting from Nigeria cement. I see us having Nestle, Diageo, Heineken producing here and shipping these goods across markets so that the average cost comes down and the market becomes huge. And so you have the benefits. So global integration and regional integration becomes an imperative, both for multinationals, for domestic small and medium scale enterprises that will supply into this, that will actually produce and supply to the conglomerates. And then we have the aviation market. For example, South African airlines have now just been privatized. Ethiopian Airlines is the only profitable airline in Africa, and it's growing. We have the domestic or the regional hub of the Ethiopian airline, which flies between here and Lome, and so we have that carrier there, and we are having Kenya Airways as well. So having said that, I think the immediate challenges are here. The immediate challenges are here, but the potential and the promise is quite huge as far as Africa and Nigeria in particular. So the countries to watch out in Africa are Nigeria, South Africa, Angola, Kenya, Ghana. Those with the 5 countries out of 54. Then also we now look at Rwanda, which is fast growing, the post-conflict countries like Rwanda, Ivory Coast, and some of the others. So at this point, I'd like to stop.
Thank you very much. I know looking at the potential, one thing you talked about that is really key is the economies of scale leading to more profitability. So there is every reason for us to get ready, and we need to understand what we need to do, how we need to position to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that exist. Thank you very much. And you talked about financial markets, the currency reforms, the payment systems. With that, I'd like to go to Mr. Kumakpai. Could you tell us what are your thoughts on these reforms, and what do we need to know, and what things do we need to really focus on to be ready for taking advantage of this market that has already been created? I like to say that the AfCFTA is really a dream whose time has come for us now in Africa.
All right. Thank you, Victoria. I guess the first point I would like to speak to is around finance, and if you look at the fundamentals of making this work, the success is largely dependent on the role of how you provide finance to increase production, to be able to cater for exports. So really finance is very, very crucial. If any literature you read about, about AfCFTA, I mean, finance is usually, stated as one of the most critical things. To actually, make it clear that, we need to facilitate transactions, that we need to mobilize savings, allocate capital, and transform risk. So really, financing is critical. Now, the problem with finance is not arising because of this new initiative. It's always been there, to support SME, to support growth, to support development. And then what has happened is that because we now have a situation whereby there is now the capacity to produce more, and it then means that for you to be able to produce more, the entrepreneurs, the companies, all right, do need more finance to enable them to produce. Now, if you look at what central bank has done over the last, not just central bank, Development Bank of Nigeria, Bank of Industry, they've focused on empowering entrepreneurs, SMEs largely, by various schemes in agri, in manufacturing, to enable them to increase their production capacity in preparation for this. CBN was also, always, almost every time, be involved in this. So CBN, I think, just right after COVID, came out with a 50 billion naira structure that allowed to support, SMEs that had issues during COVID. So these always. However, I think, what needs to be done to see that we see this sustainable is that we have to have this longer, and it has to be consistent over a 10-year period. So it can't be that, when there's an issue, there has to be a fund, that is perpetually there for SMEs for a longer, so that you can, because it's like, when you do these things, like a drop of rain, when the ground is already too hard. So for you to wet the ground, you need to consistently do this so that you can create, the capital, the capacity for these SMEs to produce consistently to now. I think Sarah said something about infrastructure, very important. And I think if you look at, for you to facilitate trade, all right, the payment infrastructure, all right, the remittance infrastructure has to be strong. I mean, that's one of the other things that, and I think that from a Nigerian standpoint, all right, I think that infrastructure, we're getting there, we're getting ready. And I think Honorable Sam mentioned the fact that Nigeria, has now overtaken Kenya in terms of, so that begins to tell you the amount of investment that Nigerian banks, fintechs are making in infrastructure, around trade, around payment, all right, to ensure that there is continuous flow of business. Now, from an Access Bank perspective, the objective for African expansion is essentially, to support regional trade. That's one of the objectives, support regional trade, and also ensure regional integration. Because what we want to ensure is that you don't have a strategy that, is disjointed, all right, because you are in countries that are not connected, and therefore you can't get the benefit of trade. So if you are in SADC, are you present enough in the SADC to actually regionally integrate, that part of the world, to ensure that there is payment, there is trade, there is remittances, there is services, by ensuring that you are in the key countries in that. If you are in West Africa, are you in the key hubs that will ensure that? So a bank also has the ability to create that regional by ensuring that people can trade across wherever they are within the region. So for me, access to finance is one of the most important things. Infrastructure to facilitate trade and payment is really the next thing in terms of how I would see. So all we are doing is that, for Access Bank, we want to ensure that we create the infrastructure. I think we have some products and services that we put in place today that allow some of those integration to happen. It's still at the early stage, but over the next 2 years, it will be developed that we can solve some of the problems of infrastructure that have been identified by Dr. Rewani. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the financial infrastructure ensuring that, you know, there is integration across the region, very important, and then access to finance, very, very important. Yes, and we have some questions coming up in the Q&A. We'll go to the Q&A shortly, but I would like to ask Mr. Olamide Tunoye. Yes, you know, we're talking about infrastructure, and one of the key infrastructure that we're talking about is a transit infrastructure. From where you sit in DHL, you'll have your footprints across Africa, and we have this challenge with infrastructure for transit and for logistics. What do you see? What's the perspective, and what are we doing? Where are we right now when it comes to facilitating trade across the region?
Yeah, thank you very much, Victoria. And I want to start by saying that AfCFTA is a journey, because if you sort out all of the tariff challenges, if you sort out the finance also, then you need to look at the logistic of the movement of goods and services from point A to point B. So like the minister said, it's not a dash, it's a journey that is going to take some time. Currently, we know that trade within Africa is less than 20%, which is far lower than what you have in most other trade bloc, and so we have the tenacity, we have the people to actually drive this number much higher than this, and AfCFTA will give us that opportunity to put the right infrastructure. Everyone has been saying it, because what is logistic without infrastructure? What is logistic without good road network? What is logistic without good rail system? Thanks to Honorable Sam, Lagos is doing well in putting a deep sea in Lagos. All other African countries need to do the same, because at the end of the day, when we dot the I's and cross the T's, you need to then move these items physically from one point to another. So it's a huge opportunity for private partnership. It's a huge opportunity for government to put in place the network of roads, the network of rails that will really facilitate this trade. And we also need to look at our sea transportation, for example. This is an opportunity for us to really invest in making our clearance process much better. We need to invest and make sure that our port can handle large cargoes from not just Lagos, for every city in Africa to be able to take this, because by the time this agreement starts yielding its fruit, we're going to have a lot of volumes that needs to go from A to B. So this is the time for African leaders to start looking at their corridor, especially when it comes to road network, their rail network. Are they properly positioned to their next door neighbor that they will benefit trade from? What is the condition of their sea process? Do they have the right infrastructure to, for example, offload the required types of ships to go through custom clearance as quickly as possible? It's a time to start to put the infrastructure together, because by the time you develop the road, you develop the rails, all of those corridors, all the economics around that will also benefit from it. It's going to trickle down to every man, every SMEs, every manufacturing companies along that corridor. Mr. Biswan said, it's an opportunity for manufacturing companies in Nigeria then to be able to move their goods across the border. Currently, it's a nightmare to move from Nigeria to neighboring countries because of the road network, the encumbrances on the road. And it's also an opportunity for investors to look at the air connectivity in Africa. Currently, we can do better. Yes, we're better than where we used to be, but we can do better, because you agree with me, getting flights to the Western world is much easier and more frequent in a day, for example, than some African countries. So if we really want to embrace the benefit of this agreement, we then need to make sure that we can connect our next door neighbors much better than we currently do. And from DHL standpoint, it's as if we saw into the vision long before now, because what we have done in Africa is to bring on board what has worked in many other trade blocs. For example, we all mentioned Europe, we mentioned Asia, technologies that were used to facilitate the trade in those regions. DHL has brought it into Africa. So we were like 20 years waiting for AfCFTA, if I might say it like that, because we have the requisite infrastructure, the knowledge that has been passed down from best practices across the world in Asia and Europe that has been working fine. And we have this across all African countries. DHL is present in all African countries, and we already have it there, ready to plug and play. We have our sister company, DHL Global Forwarding, that is doing effectively well in terms of bringing in and out cargo out of Africa and within Africa, and has all of the knowledge, all of the expertise to do this well enough within the global, within the continent. We pride ourselves in saying that no one knows Africa like we do. Indeed, you agree with me that there is the DHL presence in every African country, and also in DHL Express. We saw the vision that there needs to be good connection of flights within African countries, and we already put that into place. We have regional hubs in Lagos, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Kenya, in Johannesburg, that effectively covers the entire stretch of Africa. So the knowledge, like I said, is there, that has been working in other climes of the world. The facility is also there, the infrastructure is also there that will help such a trade agreement like this. So we have worked effectively with all other trade blocs around the globe, and Africa would definitely not be a difference. DHL is well ready to partner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tinoye. I had a question here for you from Mr. Olawale Oladeji, but I think you've already answered a lot of it, asking what DHL is doing specifically to improve logistics for intra-Africa trade. You've talked about the hubs and the experience that you bring from other trade blocs. So thank you very much for that. And I'd like to take, there is a particular question here that I'd like us to take a look at. And this is talking about, you know, the readiness and all of that. And here I have a question from, just give me a second. No, that's the one I wanted to take. Good. So yeah, I have this question from Dami Lola Ifemade, who says the monetary policy controls in terms of inflation and exchange rate regimes across the African countries. I know that Mr. Sheyi Kumakwayi has already started to speak to that. You know, instability affects the trade terms and economic performances across these countries. And she thinks that the monetary policy forces and fiscal policy control measures will need to be fully on board with three roles: control, contagion, effect. So I think Mr. Bismarck and Mr. Sheyi Kumakwayi will be able to speak to this. How are we looking at harmonizing the policy controls, the monetary policy controls across the different regions? Okay, having lived in Ivory Coast and living in Nigeria, I know that the policy control and the financial regimes are totally different. What are we doing to bring this together? And I'd like to ask Mr. Sheyi Kumakwayi first, and then if Mr. Bismarck would just share some perspective. Thank you.
All right, so let me speak to that quickly. I think if you see the experience that we have, which is the Eurozone, and you saw how difficult it was because of the various different economic profiles of each country. So you had, you know, Portugal, then you had the Big Four, you had Italy, and they had to they had to give each of these countries, all right, some time. Almost like what Demeter said around adjustment period, so that you can get your ratios to certain levels before you start to issue. So it's a journey, and you can't fiat and say, okay, inflation should be at this level, because the economic fundamentals of each country is different in terms of the macro fundamentals. The regulatory environment is different. So for that integration to happen, there has to be a time where people will be given some, allow the economy to adjust, you know, to those rules before you can finally formally integrate the way we saw with the EU. I mean, look at Nigeria, our inflation rate is at 18%. Average in Africa is 8%. Even though in terms of macro or in terms of the strength of the economy, we have the biggest economy, and therefore, so if we are to use inflation, we will drag everybody down. We will have to adjust. So really, it's a bit of adjustment and agreeing amongst the various. Maybe we are not going to have the way we have the EU, a central bank in the EU that looks at the economic and then sets the rules and then allow. And if you want to join that scheme, you need to meet certain requirements. And I guess that's where this is going to have to go for us to achieve this true regional integration and through the one currency regime that we might have to look at. So I'll let Bismarck speak to the economics of it.
Would you please unmute yourself, Mr. Rewane? Thank you.
Sorry. What we are looking at here are what we call the RICs, which is the regional integration criteria. When you have that, you have the first one and the most important one is the fiscal deficit to GDP ratio. Typically, you have about the 3% is the usual, which is normal. For Nigeria, for example, today we are at about 3.5. In Ghana, it's much more than that, it's about 12%, and in certain other markets. So once you've accepted the regional integration criteria, which includes fiscal deficit, the rate of inflation, the rate of tax to GDP ratios, and all the other things, then you begin to work towards it so that there'll be not misallocation of resources and no arbitrage opportunities. But at the end of the day, you'll find that not everybody will accomplish this, but you'll have a carry period where the laggards will have to be carried along, and then the leaders will have to actually continue to lead with the rules of gravity. But having said that, remember that there's a trade union, customs union, people union, and then they call the other one, actually you have the people, which is your visa-free movement. You have the trade where there's no tariff, and then you have financial integration where there's money can flow, both capital and current account activities can flow. Then you begin to get the full benefits of the economies of scale we are talking about. If you do it in one leg only, you will not get it. So the important thing is that how do you dismantle the currency controls, the exchange controls? How do you allow trade to flow? Because for every trade transaction, there's a settlement transaction for payment. For every settlement transaction, there's a banking system thing. So you come back to the infrastructure blend, which is, for example, the submarine cables. You would have Main One, you would have MTN, you will have Vodafone and Vodacom, you will have Safaricom, you will have, so all of these things will begin to move together. What does it do? It increases the level of activity, it makes the payments and settlement system easy and seamless, and also improves the standard of living. And more than anything else, the velocity of circulation of money, which allows for a free flow of activity. I think that the benefits are there for everybody to see, but the obstacles and the structural problems are there. And remember, in economics, we have the classical school, we have the monetary school, we have the structuralist. When all of these people agree on the same thing, which is like what is happening now, you'll find the benefits are for everybody to actually achieve in the near term. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, just coming back to the importance of having a payment system established while, the journey continues. Is a journey like we've heard several times. Mr. Tinoye mentioned that, Mrs. Demita Gyang has mentioned that several times. It's a journey. It's going to take time. And I have a question here, I think it's been answered already, about what individual organizations can do to prepare themselves to take advantage of the trade corridors that, are opening up and, with the ongoing removal of the non-trade barriers. So I think we've also answered the question in terms of overcoming the infrastructure and logistics challenges we have to build. It's not where it should be. We have a lot of work to do to get it there, and we will get there. But I have a question here for the Honorable Commissioner. And this question is from Mr. Ahmed Omar. He's asking, I'm excited that Lagos is far ahead of other states. Lagos is already years ahead of AfCFTA program, really. And he's asking, how will Lagos be able to manage the security challenges? Because with growth, with economic growth, comes more influx of people. How ready is Lagos to manage the security challenges? I mean, looking at what we're facing today, I guess that's why he's asking those questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. In any city that is a mega city, there will always be security challenges, right? Unfortunately for our situation in Nigeria, you do not have state police. And therefore, Lagos State cannot take 100% control as to what to do as far as police. That's a challenge. And like every other change that will require to take on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, we need to also push change in rules, change in policies, and change constitutional changes in some cases. Now we are doing all of that within what we currently can be accommodated. So there is what you call community policing that the Nigerian police force is pushing, and we are supporting it massively. One of the challenges is that Lagos State invests quite significantly in the Nigerian police force in Lagos, and both in training, in kitting, in foiling, and in all things, in logistics and in assets as well. Sometimes it can be frustrating after you've made all of those investments in men, and then they are posted out, right? It's challenging when you know that you need a particular number of men on the ground in the force, but you can't recruit for them, right? So all of those things are things we are working. So you hear about the regional efforts. You hear about what we call the neighborhood watch. We are currently trying to expand that watch, and what they really will be focusing on is intelligence gathering. Then the second point is we are also supporting the police force massively. Mr. President came to Lagos the other time where we donated, I would say, a lot of equipment and a lot of support to the Nigerian police force. That will continue. We're also working with the regional, the Southwest region under Amotekun, using our neighborhood watch to support that entire effort. And we're also active in the Governors Forum and in national security conversation around the eventual constitutional change that might lead to the state policing. In addition to that, we're activating the traditional organization and institutions, because really, once you have information on time, 50% to 60, 70% of the work is done. Right, you can even get the community to foil some of these things that are challenges. Now, so this influx, we're already experiencing it in Lagos, because as long as development is not evenly happening across the national positions, you will have a lot of interstate urban migration. So you need to then begin to use physical rules, physical planning rules, safety rules to moderate the way people live and work in Lagos. For example, it will not be acceptable for under the bridge to be your house address. It will not be acceptable for an excessive number of people to be in a particular space in a house. So all of those things we are working on to improve and perfect the ecosystem of security in Lagos. And I believe, like I said, these are initiatives that must happen for the free trade zone to work, because if people are going to be moving, they will move across countries. They will move. They will move to where they feel secure. It's as bad to have a net negative import is as bad as having that also for your human resource. So we're working on all of that to just ensure that we put all of that on course.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sir. Thank you. Yes, that's very valid. A very valid question, not just about Lagos State, but talking about all the states, especially the border states, where goods and services must move between across borders, and we have a lot of security challenges. And it's good to hear that at the Governors Forum there's work that is being done to actually ensure that the situation gets better. Now there is, Mrs. Demeter, you spoke a lot about the work that needs to be done by subnationals, by nationals, to ensure the implementation of the AfCFTA. And, I have this question here from Stacy Wagala, who is asking what support the AfCFTA has put in place to help the governments, the regional blocs and the government to really build the infrastructure that is needed and, put in place the processes that are needed to ensure the efficacy of the AfCFTA as we go along the journey. Yes. I don't know if she's still here. She was in transit. Hello, Mrs. Giang. Okay. I think she's not connected, and we'll try and take that question. If not now, we'll take it later.
Are you with me?
Okay, great. I have you now. Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah, I didn't hear the question. Can you take it again?
Okay, so the question from Stacy Wagala is asking, since a lot of work has to be done by the national governments to implement the AfCFTA or to ensure the success of the AfCFTA, and she's saying that a lot of work has to be done to support the national governments, to do what needs to be done. Is there any structure? Is there any support system that the AfCFTA is putting in place to support the governments?
Okay, so there is. African Bank provided an adjustment facility to the tune of 1.5 billion. State parties can access this depending on their need. That's one. Then from the secretariat's point, I've talked about capacity building, which the secretariat is called upon to give. Like I said to you,
we're losing you. Okay, I think because she's in transit, her connectivity is really not the best. I would like to take this question, the question from Rehi Idonije, and she's asking, what is the role of public-private partnership? So we're talking about, the integrated payment systems and infrastructure deficit and all that needs to be done. Is there a way that we can address this, leveraging PPP engagements? And this question, I'd like to ask Mr. Kumakpai, with Access Bank and your footprint across the different regions, is there a way that you're partnering with governments and with other private sector players to try and address these challenges?
Thank you, Victoria. Yes, there are possibilities and opportunities, and as we have seen in Nigeria, on some transactions on the port side that we've partnered with government. We are partnering with on the Badagry seaport with government. So definitely there are opportunities. And as we get into many of the African countries, we are looking for, because our view is that if you are in a country, you have to make an impact in that country.
Yes, but I am available to answer your questions in a written.
I'm sorry about that. I think she loses us and then comes back.
Yes. Okay. Let me continue. So for us, we would like to make an impact in countries that we are, and therefore we are looking for opportunities, to partner with government and to ensure that economic development comes to every country. So we've seen that instances in Ghana. We're in South Africa now. There we'll find opportunities. So yes, there are definitely as long as it fits into the overall strategy of the organization, like ours, as we have seen in many countries that we are. So yes, there are definitely opportunities to partner with government. There are structures, that you can do it, working with concession arrangement, with concessionaires. So definitely there are opportunities, and it's happening even in Nigeria, and I think we can extend it, beyond just Nigeria into various African countries that we are present, and we are actively pursuing those engagements with all the governments all the countries that we are present in.
Thank you very much. And I just have a quick question as well for Mr. Olamide Tinoye. We're talking about the poor state of the infrastructure and what amount of work needs to be done to get us ready. But right now, there are organizations, I've seen a few comments here, who are ready, who are looking for, how can we take advantage of the opportunity that exists right now? Are there any options, any workarounds for the challenges that we have right now, but to facilitate the movement of their goods and services across the borders? I mean, I'm saying this in perspective, with the perspective of how long it takes goods to actually get into the port when you're processing them for export, and how long it takes to get them out of the ports when you get them to the country that you're getting them to. I talked about that you have, the DHL Express services and, your experience across the other trade blocks. What can exporters do? What can companies who are ready now and have goods and services to export, how can they get that done in the current circumstances?
All right. As it is, business has been thriving to an extent in Africa, even before this agreement. And for example, in DHL, for example, we have quite a number of facilities that can help anyone right now to move their goods from one point to another. Even with all of the challenges we know about the road and all of that. So to take care of heavy cargoes, we have DHL Global Forwarding, which will still be subject to some of those issues at the port and all of that. But then we have the know-how, we have what works in other climes, and then we have good relationship with customs in various countries. So we are able to put forward our case and get some of those goods as quickly as we can, bearing the current situation until the agreement fully takes its place and it's more seamless. But we have that technology from all of that trade blocks working fine. With DHL Global Forwarding, you can still get all your goods across the port. You can still get all your heavy cargo flown from every part of Africa. We will still go through the process, but you can be sure that you have professionals who knows how it's done in other climes and will replicate that to you as much as possible, as much as the law and the bureaucracy in those countries allow. And also we have DHL Express that does express time-sensitive delivery across the entire length of Africa. For example, we do deliveries within Africa in matter of days for those express deliveries that are critical to your production, critical to your services, critical to your customers. So DHL Express already have its own network of flights. We have regional hub in West Africa, we have in Kenya, we have in Johannesburg, and all of those facilities are really functional as it is. And one good thing is in those countries also, just like DHL Global Forwarding, we have good custom relationship, government agencies relationship. So we are able to provide whatever it is required for your goods to clear as quickly as possible. And then we have good transit time within the African continent, for example. So we know it will get better with after taking its full course, but as it is right now, we have good infrastructure to help your business to take your goods from A to B. The infrastructure is just there already. It's just for you to plug in and play. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So infrastructure is there, plug and play, and the support to ease the movement of goods while we wait for the AfCFTA to take off fully. And finally, I have this question for Mr. Bismarck-Rewane, and it's about, the ease of doing business. You did speak about the ease of doing business. You did talk about what the central bank is already doing and that we are getting ready as Nigeria, as from your perspective. But Mr. Nonso Ndumaya, he works with the Anambra State government. Yes, and he's saying that, Nigeria ranks in the hundreds in most of the competitiveness indexes, including the World Bank Ease of Doing Business report, even though, like you've mentioned, the federal government has done so much in this regard, and a lot more needs to be done if the AfCFTA must work for us. And he's asking, how do we begin to leverage technology or private sector capabilities to improve the nation's competitiveness? In view of, we've done a lot, but there's a lot still to be done, and we don't even see sometimes in tangible terms how much easier it is becoming to do business in Nigeria specifically. What do we need to do now?
Thank you very much. Efforts matter, but results are what make things happen. So you could be running on one spot for a long time and getting nothing done. So yes, we've made a lot of efforts, but what we are calling for is for impactful results. So what is going to happen? First and foremost, the ideology of homegrown activity, import substitution, domestication of your economy, and those are outdated economic philosophy. In the modern technology world, integration matters, global village. So you have to be competitive, and you have to be able to transfer the price efficiency and the cost efficiencies to the customer, so you can you can actually attract capital to your country and also use your country as a stepping stone, as a beachhead to actually compete. So that is what's happening. I think there's a transition, an ideological transition in Nigeria from very rigid old school ideas to somewhere in the middle. But I think it won't be long before you see a takeoff where we will embrace technology, embrace modern concepts, because the transition from imperfect markets, which have its own advantages, to perfect markets, which has super advantages, is the difference is that open, homogeneous commodities, many buyers and sellers, easy entry and exit, and perfect information. To the extent that you are using Nigeria's broadband penetration of over 40%, telephony of almost 90%, and now we are having fintech revolution. Sheyi was talking about that, both in the banking space, in the telco space, and in the fintech space. All of these things mean that you can no longer have barriers to entry. The currency reform will follow. Once the currency reform is done and finished, both in capital and current account convertibility, you'll find that there'll be massive flows inwards and also massive flows outwards. And that, at the end of the day, it will be a tide that will lift all the boats. So I'm very optimistic about the future, in spite of the policy rigidities of today.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's we need that sound of hope. And, you know, going back to the time for adjustment, we all need a time for adjustment. And, you know, with all the fintech startups that are coming up, and, you know, the solutions that Access Bank, DHL, or the players that have their footprints across Africa, including the Dangotes, the Nestle's, and all the other multinationals that are across the region, we are very hopeful that we will begin to see more results on the ground. And Mrs. Demita is not on, because I had a question for her, saying from Ambula Name, who says that the number for the future looks good, but we want to see, what have you done? What have you done already? It's one thing to give hope, but what have you done concretely? I think that's a question that will need to be answered another time. And so with that, I would like to ask, you know, all the panelists as we close out this session. And I want to thank everybody for your participation and the questions that you've asked. But for time, we really need to start closing. So I would like to ask for just 1 minute, what is the one thing that we haven't said today that you would like the participants here to go away with, and what can we do as a body, as a collective, as individuals, as companies and organizations to move forward the needle when it comes to getting ready, our readiness for the AfCFTA. I'd like to start from Mr. Sheyi Kumapai, and then Mr. Tinui, and then finally Mr. Bismarck-Rwani. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. I think from a closing comment for me is that AfCFTA is definitely a step in that direction. And just as we've stated, the trade implications and the GDP implications, we're going to be able to pull 100 million people out of poverty. Clearly, we need this in Africa, clearly. So from a Nigerian perspective, I do believe that we really stand in a lot to gain, given our population, our demographics, the entrepreneurial endeavors of Nigeria, the maturity and innovation within the FSI, you know, put us in good stead, you know, to drive actually the implementation of this principle, because I think we're going to benefit for it from the most. I mean, obviously there are many impediments. I mean, there are different sets of implementation. You have 5 years, then you have 13 years to 20 to 33. So it's not done. It's not done. There are impediments, there are challenges, there are customs integration. So there's a lot of work to be done. And I guess to make this happen, we need to ensure that, you know, we keep our eyes on the ball, because this is extremely, extremely important for Africa, and to take Africa, you know, to a different level and from an ability to compete within the global economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Olamide Tinui. 1 minute, please. Thank you.
Okay, for me, I like to close by saying that We all need to embrace the opportunity that this agreement gives, and then we need to all focus on tangible traction from paper to realities on ground. And there needs to be a lot of training for SMEs. Africa is blessed with a lot of them right now. E-commerce is booming and all of that. SMEs are going off the hook. There needs to be a lot of training on how they can take good advantage of this. And then lastly, I'll just say that there should also be a user guide for every player to know what the agreement offers, how I am to work for manufacturers, for transporters, for logistic operators.
It's frozen.
Oh, yes, I think it's frozen. Okay, your 1 minute, Mr. Rewane. Thank you.
Okay, I just have 3 quotes. One is that Nigeria is not a rich country. Nigeria is a large country. 2, African Continental Free Trade Agreement is going to make the small boys compete with the big boys. 3, that the mental adjustment is more difficult than the fiscal adjustment. And that if a rich man sleeps all night and a poor man works all night, in the morning, the poor man will become a rich man and the rich man may become a poor man. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are very, very pertinent quotations. The rich man and the poor man. Nigeria is not a rich country. It is a large country. And the small boys can get up and beat the big boys if they're up and doing. Thank you very much. And one thing is critical that has come out from our discussions today. There is need for a user guide, as Mr. Tinoyo was telling us, and then there is need for readiness. There is need to build up the capacity, to build up the knowledge levels of everyone, and we can't keep talking about, we can't talk about it enough. We need to keep having these sessions where we have these discussions to grow the body of knowledge and to make sure that we're all ready, we understand what we need to do and what roles each person needs to play. So thank you very much, panelists. You've been awesome. And thank you, participants. And with that, I hand it back to Kat. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all our experts. First, Victoria, thank you for moderating this very lively session. And to our experts who gave us very pertinent input, but also some suggestions for actionable items, next steps we could take, different organizations in their respective capacity. I think we agree that yes, AfCFTA is a journey, not only because of the timeline, but also because there's so many items that we need to look at and solutions we need to figure out. Some ideas we have, but a lot we will learn on the way. So thank you very much to Demeter Guillain of the AfCFTA Secretariat, who was in transit and is currently not online with us, but nevertheless gave us very important insights. Olamide Tinoye, Area Sales Manager, DHL, thank you very much also for presenting some of your practical experience. Sheyi Kumapai of Access Bank, thanks a lot for your insights. And Bismarck Rewane, not only for the last quotes, but also for your other input, CEO of Financial Derivatives Company Limited. I mentioned a few times that this event would not be possible without the support by the German desk, a joint initiative by the Access Bank, DEG, and the Delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria. We have the head of the German desk, Sebastian Barroso, with us, and he will now not only introduce Access Bank is introduced, the German desk, but also shed some light on the question of access to finance, which has been raised a few times. So Sebastian, over to you.
Thank you very much. And also my appreciation goes out to the panelists for making it possible. As we can see, the high number of participants in today's session, as I think this is a very interesting topic. And I was delighted and very happy to see how interesting topics could be discussed in this. And I learned a lot, especially in numbers. I'm very grateful also that the commissioner had time, and also Demeter was participating, and also, of course, for my colleague Sheyi. And I really liked the closing word of Mr. Dr. Rewane at the end, a very nice analogy, which I think we all have to feel and put into practice. So taking a little bit of your time, and I think I don't take much. I only have prepared some slides for today's session that are going to start, and I would like to start with, I think, something that was already mentioned today sometimes, the comparison to the European Union. And it was a quote I decided to start with that was from Jean-Claude Juncker, when he said that the European Union has decades of experience in overcoming crisis and has always emerged stronger after. And I think we can take this quote also for the African Union and for the African Free Trade Area, since in my opinion, I think we have a lot of things to do and a lot of things that is upcoming, taking into consideration that the whole European Union started in 1952 and then took 48 years to have an official start. The African Union is way to go. And this makes on my next slide a little bit more visible, as we can definitely see. Africa is not a continent equivalent in size to Europe or the United States. It's larger than both of those combined, with enough room remaining to accommodate China and India. So to add some shade and subtlety to this portrait, this continent is also nearly internally infinite. It is home to more than 1.2 billion people that speak upwards to approximately 2,000 languages. So if we take comparison to Europe, houses a little bit over 200 argots and dialects. And that linguistic multiplicity is coupled with an ethnic one. So across the 54 nations, fully 3,000 different indigenous groups live, including Berbers and Zulus and the Yorubas and Igbos, Fulanis, Kikuyas, and of course many, many more. But as we have learned today, and I wanted to mention that as well, is with the current COVID pandemic still ongoing in many countries, new versions coming out, the pandemic has further revealed the need for strengthening regional cross-border value chains. So the COVID lockdowns is a testament to the fact that countries and regions need to build and strengthen national and regional supply chains. So the pandemic affected, we heard about it, trade, FDIs, remittances, prices of commodities, and several other important economic variables which have trended downwards. We heard it about the economic situation and the growth in Africa. So I think it was also Olamide who said that many African countries dependent on 80 to 90% of trade with the rest of the world. So the inter-regional trade in Africa page around 15%. There was between 2015 and 2017, then increased a little bit. But as we heard also from Mr. Bismarck-Ruane, in contrast to the Eurozone with almost 70% and Asia and 60% and even Americas with almost 50%, there's a way to go. And I wanted to give that example because I think it's a nice paradox. And we all know that. People who are living in Nigeria know that with the oil. But let me give that example as well with Egypt and South Africa. Supply final chocolate products for the domestic and sub-regional markets. Predominantly, their sources from outside the continent. Meanwhile, we all know Africa is the largest producer of cocoa, the major inputs in the production of chocolate. And as I said, we can have the same example with major oil producing countries in Africa, like Nigeria. Most countries on the continent, including Nigeria, rely on importation of refined petroleum products to survive, which has also increased the Nigerian trade deficit. Even just now, the numbers of importation have increased. So the crude oil is exported and sold as a price taker, and refined products are imported again as a price taker. And I think this is where the African Free Trade Agreement could deepen and expand intra-Africa trade from its very low base from, I think it was Ms. Demeter, who said from 15% to up to 52%. Let me, on the next slide, also give a little bit, one slide before, Yolanda, if you, yeah, exactly. I think that is the interesting slide to name when we see the money, and this is a Partex report of 2020, where 26 African countries attracted venture capital funding in 2020 with a total of $1.43 billion. The sum might seem small on a global scale. Yes, indeed. This only represents 0.5% of the whole $300 billion raised in venture capital last year. But it's really an illustration of the region's advancement. So if we go back 10 years ago, the African startup and venture capital ecosystem was virtually non-existent. And since 2015, I think the continent has seen over 40% in annual VC capital growth. And of course, with Nigeria, perhaps the best single national market. It has many of the ingredients to support venture scale businesses, including 200 million population, strong tech talent. Now, I'm sure we have a lot of participants here that are in these areas, robust angel networks and impressive insurgents with, for example, Flutterwave and Interswitch that are both based in Lagos. So Nigeria is particularly renowned for its fintech scene, and also was, I think, last year, that is no wonder that the country retained its title as #1 destination for investments, receiving around 21% of funding. As my colleague says, I think experts have revealed that the success of the African Continental Free Trade Area will rely heavily on the financial services and industries, ability to facilitate the process. And this is where I want to talk a little bit about us, about Axis Bank, about the German desk on the next slide, which I think is quite interesting to see, as the bank has also have present, as we heard it from my colleague Shei, in 14 African countries and counting. Just this year, South Africa, Kenya. So in these whole 14 countries, home to over half a billion people, counting about $770 billion, which is about 30% of the GDPs. Africa, Axis Bank is becoming a gateway to Africa and to the world. And this is where, on the next slides, next one. This is where also the initiative stated by Katrina today was that the German desk is a collaboration that has started 3 years ago with DG, the local bank, in this case, Axis Bank. As you can see, we have also German desks in other countries. One, of course, also in the East African region. And then strengthening with the German Chamber of Commerce, the local strengthening the local strategy, giving support and solutions in the financial sector. And of course, also not only to German companies, but of course to Nigerian, and now extending with Axis Bank having even a Dutch desk, extending to other European countries. And this is where I think we have made a very important step 3 years ago. So on my next slide, let me just show you the key pillars that we drive and that we are built on, that is built on a solid foundation. Of course, we heard it. We need universal payments, the gateway. Axis Bank is working already with that. The global collaboration, which is very important when it comes to financial integration as well. The digital-led, very important. And of course, then the retail banking, growth and wholesale banking consolidation within whatever we have in the different countries. So saying and having said this, I think it is quite important to see that this is way to go. We are very strong in Nigeria as the German desk is developing here since the last 3 years, but we are also expanding into the other countries, into neighbor countries like Ghana, like Cameroon, like Mozambique and Angola, the Portuguese speaking continent parts. And of course, South Africa, Botswana. So this is a long way to go, and we want to go along with the free trade agreement and establish that. And I think at the end, let me just give you some options that we have also in terms of financing together with DEG. DEG is also present in Nigeria, but also present in other parts of Africa. And together with the German chambers, here in this case, the delegate, Katrina, we have the support and a strong team with a local bank to provide solutions that go a little bit beyond the normal products, having our partners with mezzanine financing and equity participation at DEG, but also Access Bank doing project finance, ECA covered, and then having the expertise at the German Chamber of Commerce. Having said this, I want to close and appreciate and thank everybody for participating in this event today. And special thanks also again to Katrina and her team. Maybe I can say that many congratulations to Katrina's birthday, as it was yesterday. So all the best. I think you've been doing a great job. And once again, many thanks for the participants of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sebastian, for this overview of what the German desk is doing, but also some, say, context, not only for AfCFTA, but also for access to finance. Thanks for the birthday message. Those who know us quite well also know that the Delegation of German Industry and Commerce is celebrating its birthday this year. We're celebrating 40 years of existence in Nigeria. And with that, we're also celebrating our strong partnerships, our clients, and all the progress we have made, but we're also very much looking forward to tackling the new challenges. Speaking of which, I think today's session has shown that, yes, there are a lot of ideas, but there are also already observations of challenges we need to overcome together in partnership. We need some new ideas, we need some new suggestions, and I'm sure we will see a few approaches that we will try, and we will also fail, but eventually together succeed. The Delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria is here to support that process as a partner, as a facilitator, like we did today. Develop solutions together and again identify and raise challenges so that we can overcome those together. My appreciation goes first of all to the German desk for supporting today's session, not only with Sebastian as a speaker, but also in the background. I want to also highlight our panelists, our fantastic moderator, and once again express my appreciation to Honorable Sam, the Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget, Lagos State, for his input. Fantastic input, I think, for all of us. And again, we had a lot of participants in today's session that I think will also follow up with requests and suggestions afterwards. Final appreciation to my colleague Yolanda, who's been working in the background, putting the session together, making sure that the session is running smoothly today. Thank you very much for doing that. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to the Delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria, to any of us. I'm sure all the speakers are also very interested in hearing back. Those who joined late the session today, we recorded the session and will make the recording available. So if you want to go back to a certain point or you missed the beginning maybe of the presentations or the panel discussion, you will have access to that information. Reach out anytime. We will continue this conversation from our end. Maybe you should mark your calendars. We have a big event coming up at the beginning of November, the German-Nigerian Business Forum on the 9th and 10th of November, which will take place physically in Lagos, but will also be supported by an online platform for those who are joining us from abroad and who may not be able to travel to attend the event. So the German-Nigerian Business Forum, 9th and 10th of November. We will, of course, also continue the conversation about the African Continental Free Trade Area. And you will hear and see a lot of the experts and partners that you had today also at the German-Nigerian Business Forum. So we're really looking forward to having you there again, but we will also have other conversations building up to this event. So thank you very much for all your support. We're here to assist. Reach out. We're really looking forward to more conversations. Thank you very much and do have a good day.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.